Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Line Change, the NHL betting podcast from the Action Network. My name is Michael Leboff, and joining me, as always, are my friends and co-hosts Tim Kalinowski and Nick Martin. A big week coming up in the NHL and the sporting world at large. The trade deadline is Friday, and also overnight into Friday, the Australian Football League kicks off. So get ready for the opening round down under. Always a great sport to keep an eye on. Something I love. This is Gold Coast's year, 35-1. That's my favorite future. But we'll talk more footy down the line, and for now, we'll stick to the pucks and the sticks and the ice. And we got an 8-game slate, I believe, 9-game slate on Tuesday. So we'll start with our favorite underdogs, as we like to do on these bigger slates. And Nick, you're backing a dog to end what has been maybe the most surprising winning streak in the NHL this season.
Yeah, I think we've had a pretty good feel for the Preds because I was giving them quite a bit of credit right before this win streak. Took them Saturday, took them in a couple of the games, but I think this is the right time to sell with a team that I really haven't been endorsing that much. I know they broke your heart with their shootout loss on Saturday, but that was another testament to the fact that they're actually playing quite a bit better right now with the Montreal Canadiens. They looked pretty good in their shootout loss versus Florida, too. They obviously did get outplayed in that game, but to a very livable extent, considering the betting prices that we're getting with this team. Should be a Sam Montembeault game, which I like. That's the one thing I'd need here is him to be in goal. But they really have just looked competitive enough that they're so likely to hang around in this game and lean on that good goaltending. They're priced at plus 180 right now. I think that's a little too long. I think that they have the avenues to help keep the Predators in check in what's a pretty good sell high spot with the Preds kind of entering this at their absolute peak and what could be kind of a high water mark. So I don't really think there's too much to the handicap. Just looks like a good spot to try to get on a Habs team that's scrappy and good at hanging around with their elite goaltending. And that plus 180 has become kind of just too long of a number for me here.
Oh boy. Yeah. Leboff, this falls, I think, perfectly into your style of handicap, which is like if we're talking about this team on the national circuit, then it's time to fade them. Nashville Predators deservingly getting a lot of love the last couple of weeks for what they've done in the Western wild card race here with this winning streak, the Sphere signing Novak. Like it's been a lot of positive headlines for the Predators here. I would say also too, again, I think they're a good team and we've been giving them a lot of credit, but this winning streak, they did the classic, took care of business at San Jose and Anaheim, right? Then the Senators, who I think I could argue it's more about Ottawa not being able to generate a shot in the third period of that game than it totally is about the Nashville Predators. They get the Wild on a really bad spot, beat them 6-1. So yes, like I'm not calling it a complete fluke, but baked into this winning streak are some of the things that make an NHL winning streak, which is cleaning up in good spots and obviously the Anaheim San Jose thing. So I'll be on this dog as well, Nick. I think your head's in the right place.
Yeah, and the other note there too, I kind of touched on it with kind of like my visual assessment of the recent games, but the Habs have actually played to a 48% expected goal rating the over their last 8 games, which sounds not great, but considering their betting price, that's actually a really good share of the play, especially when you're talking about a goaltender as strong as Montembeault. So the underlying numbers do suggest the Habs are playing a lot better, and I've liked their last 2 games and those shootout losses. So yeah, I think they're going to be really live here.
54.3% over their last 10 per natural stat trick in terms of expected goal rate, and a plus 10 differential in terms of high danger chances for the Canadians. And this is one of those subtle improvements that just won't get picked up on. We just, Tim, as you pointed out, uh, when a team like Nashville is going like this and everyone's talking about it, everyone kind of starts to sink their teeth into the numbers and what makes this interesting. Is it legitimate? Is it not? It becomes discourse. And by then, like everyone's opinions are sort of shaped. The market has caught on to it. But Montreal's won twice in its last 10 games despite these improvements. So these kind of marginal gains aren't often picked up on by the betting market at large. So I do think that the Canadians are still a buy team right now. And like you said, Nick, that was a frustrating loss on Saturday in terms of both like the playoff race for the Islanders and obviously betting on them to beat the Lightning, giving up a shorthanded goal with like 4 minutes left and then losing in a 6-round shootout. So right back on the Habs against the Predators. My favorite underdog is Columbus at 2-1 against Pittsburgh. The Penguins, man, they're going to be a minus 245 favorite at the time of recording, and this total 6.5. They're coming back from a Western swing where things looked okay after a win in was it Vancouver. Then they got goalied by Philip Grubauer of all people in Seattle. They blow a late lead in Calgary to lose in regulation, and then back to back game. They got into Edmonton apparently like 3 a.m. So I guess you can sort of excuse the effort if this was like game 21 and it wasn't a must-win spot for the Penguins. But then they gave up a couple goals in the second period and completely just no-showed. And it's pretty clear what they're going to do at the deadline with Jake Gensel, maybe Nedeljkovic, and some of the other spare pieces around Pittsburgh. So this is not a team I want to back as a minus 250 favorite. Not a great spot for Columbus at all in the schedule. They're not a great team. Kent Johnson's now hurt. That they're the Columbus Blue Jackets, right? Like, so there's a reason this number is so long. But I think that I'm more than happy to just try to poke the Penguins with numbers this big for the foreseeable future. So I'll take on Pittsburgh once again with a big underdog here, Nick.
Yeah, I like the over in this game. The Pens game Saturday was just completely ridiculous. Just a stupid loss. As much as they collapsed too, they also could have been up 4 goals. And that Riley Smith post really was it was one of those games that if you revisit it with how it went, it seems so bad, but then it's also like, how the hell did they lose? And I don't know. I think the prices look about fair. The play that I like here, I like the over. And I'm probably just going to go right back to Crosby props here and Raquel props because I think they're going to get their share. And we've seen the bottom 6 is still trash right now. They're catching Columbus on a back-to-back. So I think it's one of those spots where we have a big favorite, but a big favorite that's also really likely to rely on their big dogs on a lot of game scripts. And then if I was to target Columbus, I would kind of prefer just taking a slightly lesser price on over 2.5 goals in this spot where they're going to have Jet Greaves in net. Or the other one too, I'll definitely just keep my eyes out for the Russian trio from Columbus, their top shot props. I think you could go with, and again, this is before they play on Monday, but I'll probably go with Marchenko or Voronkov. Voronkov's gone over 2.5 in 6 of his last 11, and he's still like plus 200 every night to get there. So I think it's going to be a pretty good prop game, and I think those are the ones that I like best.
I mean, I hate the Pittsburgh Penguins so much. They're done. They're dead. It's over. So with that said, I mean, first game back after that swing, Columbus, it seems to me pretty live for the narrative. And I know that we try and be natural contrarians as bettors and not buy into that. But like Pittsburgh, I mean, Nick, they're last year's Flames, right? In terms of just, they don't deserve it, man.
You got to consider though, like
it.
Those spots versus Columbus back to back with Jet Greaves and net. I just think there is some arguments as to why they'll like stabilize here. Yep. Even the Oilers game, as horrible as it was, if you look at when it was 1-0 and Crosby had the cross crease like tap in that he missed, like it was a good save, but he missed that, and then they went the other way and scored, and then that was the bottom fell out. Like they completely quit. But that was still like overall their road trip was better than it looked. So I'm just like a little weary of them here. They also hit like 3 posts in that game.
Yeah. I
don't
think
know.
it's a type of team in a spot where if Columbus like just stakes themselves to an early lead, you could just see the Penguins wilt here. And I'd actually, we talk about Daniel Tarasov and Elvis Merzlikins splits. At least Jet Greaves like isn't Tarasov. I'd much rather bet on Greaves right now than the Russian who's going to be going on Monday night against the Golden Knights. Yeah, it's ugly, but I just think you're getting way too good a price on to go against the Penguins team that could be sitting guys as they're looking to trade them, etc. So I like Columbus here. And our final underdog, Tim, that goes to you, and it's, talk about the Penguins being unbettable at minus 245. The Arizona Coyotes are minus 230 against the Chicago Blackhawks on Tuesday night.
I mean, for me, that is about as unbettable as it gets. So I'm on the Chicago Blackhawks here at the plus money price. I just don't think it's deserving of this big of gap. I mean, Arizona, like, sure, they stabilized for 2 games here, and I know that they were playing better for spurts during that losing streak, but I'm just totally willing to take a flyer on the Blackhawks. I know it's a traveling back to back from Colorado, but just it can't be this big of a gap, guys. I'm sorry. I just don't see it. So I'm gonna take, just a little half unit flyer on the Blackhawks here. I think their effort is always, pretty decent as a dog. They're feisty. There's not many opportunities you get to bet them and feel like sort of be able to convince yourself. I think in this situation I can. That makes me a moron, so be it, but you got to pick an underdog. So yeah. Nick, you're the other way though, right?
I'm the other way. I am I mean, we'll see where the numbers go. Some of the openers I actually think this is a really good spot for the Coyotes. They haven't had many good spots lately. I continue to think they're playing quite well. They've got all their guys back. They've got a lot of guys playing pretty good and looking dangerous. So for me, I actually kind of like the Coyotes here if we see um particularly if we yeah, so Mrazek's gonna play Monday. So with Soderblom going Tuesday, I actually like the Coyotes here. I think they've played well enough recently that I like their chances of paying off as a huge favorite, even though it seems kind of crazy, but their underlying process is really good recently. And the only thing that's kind of blown that up is shaky goaltending, but they also continue to have played against like a really, really tough schedule. So I like the spot here. I think they're going to show out at home.
Yeah, I'm not going near
Oh,
this
boy.
one. No, thank you. I'll just root for our Andre Turigny, Coach of the Year tickets. I think those ones, they still have life.
Rooting for them what to like
Just
no
he just
not
needs to.
15
He
in a
just the
row and we're
Coyotes just
back
need to
on
rip. They
track.
just need to go 21-1 for their last 22 games, and he'll win. That'll be that'll get him to the top of the ballot. All right, so it's the Habs for Nick. Tim's on the Blackhawks. I'm on the Blue Jackets as our favorite underdogs. Let's look at the big board before we get to our best bets for Tuesday night. We'll start with talk about the Penguins trip out west being a disaster. The New Jersey Devils, man, oh man. They're going to welcome the Florida Panthers in their first game back home after a disastrous trip. We said before the Sharks game that we could see this team just dying on the vine in the Shark Tank, and the Sharks were a good price at whatever they were. And it ended up being a wild game where Mackenzie Blackwood got hurt after being on pace for like 56 saves in the game, and was it end 7-5 for New Jersey. A lot of chicanery in that one. Should have thought, okay, if that didn't work, you saw the flaws are still there. Just try again with the Ducks. The Devils outshoot them by 31 and get Lucas Dostal in that loss, and then they don't respond really against the Kings, who just smothered them. And now they get the Panthers in a decent spot. Like, Florida's going to be going in a heavyweight tussle at Madison Square Garden on Monday night. They'll be playing Bobrovsky in that one. Anthony Stolarz has been great anyway, so it's not a huge thing to look into. Plus, he's going to be a big edge over whoever the Devils have in goal. Florida is minus 120 on the back-to-back. The Devils plus 100. Total 6.5. If you're going to bet into a response game, like, I can see it here with the Devils at a plus number, but I'm totally okay with just punting this one because I don't think the Devils really deserve your money at this kind of price here, Tim.
I couldn't have said it better. They don't deserve your money. They don't deserve goaltending. They don't deserve your money. They don't deserve a different head coach. They don't deserve anything the way they've played. It's the back-to-back here for it's really about the back-to-back for Florida, right? I think that's like the only thing that kind of scares you off. We'd be so excited, I think, probably to bet Florida at a short price against New Jersey, but that monkey wrench of the back-to-back makes things a little difficult. I'll just say the New Jersey Devils last Wednesday, they were plus 115, 125 to make the playoffs. They're now plus 320 at where I'm looking right now. They, like, in just 5 days, they completely ignited this thing and lit it on fire. So I'm sorry. It's going to take a lot of gumption to be able to bet the Devils. I looked at the total. I was interested in the over at first because I think that your gut reaction when you look at the Devils is overs. But Florida is such an under team, especially as a favorite, that I'm kind of caught in between. And a lot of words here for me to say. I don't have much.
Yeah, I don't mind the over either. I think it's a pretty good look. I don't really care that. Like, to me, it just comes down, do you think the Devils will get theirs offensively in this spot? I think they can. They generated a ton on their Western trip. Granted, at times it's just like, whatever, throwing whatever they can at the net and hoping something sticks. And same thing with the lineup every game. I think I wouldn't bet the Devils here, but I kind of lean with them. I think they'll get their chances, but I don't know. It's that's kind of just on the spot thing. And I think our take on that Western trip was right, even if the
Yep.
San Jose one was the only one that hit the podcast. Because I thought they should have fired Lindy Ruff. I thought they were delaying the inevitable, and I didn't really get why. And like you said, they come home, they're plus 320 to make the playoffs, and now just waiting to do something that already should have been done, I think. So yeah, I really didn't have much here either.
Okay. Only a couple more before we get to best bets. Let's go to the Kraken and Jets. Seattle's plus 150, Winnipeg minus 180, and a total here of 5.5. Looks like Alexander Venberg, who, as I texted you guys over the weekend, I did not realize that this guy was on the all handsome team. He's an incredibly good looking dude. He's on his way out. They're scratching him for this one due to trade related reasons. I think the Rangers have been in and around him, so perhaps going there. They are plus 150 in Winnipeg. The Jets minus 180 and a total of 5.5. Winnipeg has just been quietly solid since they were loudly, coming back down to earth a few weeks ago. And then there was that whole thing with their, I don't know, season ticket holder base. They had that weird, their owner did that weird press tour where he talked about, they're in like some financial distress or something. I don't know. And then Gary Bettman shows up in Winnipeg with Bill Daly, and they're like, I don't understand what the big deal is here. They're doing great. But anyways, long story short, they're a decent favorite here. They've been in really good form, but I do think that coming off of a road trip that saw them in Dallas, Carolina, and Buffalo, Carolina, Buffalo back to back, comeback wins in those latter two legs to respond to a loss in Dallas, and just really good stretch of hockey where they're 9-2. I think that this is actually a decent chance to sell high on Winnipeg, who is continuing to um, get results through the way they've done it all season, which is the goaltending. They're scoring a little bit more lately, but that was always going to come around after that like dip. And I think that the Kraken are the type of team that can just grind with you. So I think that this game it's not a coin flip. I'm not saying that, but it's closer to that than these odds suggest. So I can see this being pretty tight. Can see it being a decent overtime bet. And I think that as long as Seattle gets the goaltending that it's gotten, in a few games of late, they're worth a bet here, Tim.
Yeah, I think if you're a little underwhelmed by some of our lukewarm takes on these games, this one is totally like indicative of that, in that I would love to bet Seattle here because of all the reasons you mentioned about Winnipeg, first game back from a road trip in which they, ended it with 2 comeback wins, but Seattle traveling on a back-to-back from Calgary. That's what makes it difficult. I think it takes 2 to tango here. And so it's hard to have a lot of conviction about a play like this, but I definitely see myself betting Seattle here, Mike, because I just think the style that they want to play, the style Winnipeg wants to play, low scoring game, could see this thing going to overtime, and I'm happy to have a ticket with, big-ish plus money on Seattle if it goes that way. So I definitely see the avenue for Seattle here, and we'll probably be betting them. Granted, Winnipeg gets a lot of credit for what they did, but that takes a lot out of you. And I think if we try to figure out what the formula is to lay a dud on your first game back, like that could be it for Winnipeg,
Yeah, I like the Kraken here too. I'm hoping we can see some plus 160 tomorrow as people kind of put the back-to-back situation together. And maybe if Wenberg gets traded, and that probably gets
Yep.
overrated based on it's not like the Kraken have a ton of offensive depth, but they have a ton of the same kind of level of
Exactly.
player.
Yeah.
So like it's not going to be that big of a replacement level loss, I don't think. Um, so yeah, I agree. I like the Kraken. I'm keeping my eye on them. I think we'll probably see some plus 160s tomorrow, and I'll play that because like you guys said, they really have first off been a pretty good bet recently with their record at 5-5 straight up in the last 10. That's been a really good record. A lot of those they were underdogs where they just hung around to beat the Bruins twice, the Islanders. I thought they were really solid, full value to their price Saturday versus Edmonton, the Pittsburgh win, the win over the Canucks, and even that shootout loss to Detroit. Everyone was a lot of a similar kind of game script where they were right there. They hung around. They played to their betting price quite effectively, I would say. And I think this can definitely be the same. So I'm hoping people will just really like the spot for the
Right.
Jets and kind of move them over there because I think it is quite possibly going to be a good time to get on the Kraken.
And I'll just add, Mike, I think that Seattle, if they didn't have that just horrendous schedule to start the year, we would look at them a little differently. If you remember way back, where
Yeah.
like when I at one point I was like, I don't think Seattle's going to be home for like a month. They had a really tough start to the season, and I think we'd just be looking at them completely differently if we could put that out of our minds. And when Seattle gets goaltending, in a way, they're like Winnipeg light. That kind of like, oh, we have three third lines type of thing. Like it's they're a version of Winnipeg, it feels like.
Yep. I think that's all fair. Um, and like Nick said, I think that the trade in a weird way will help you find value in this bet more than it'll hurt. Okay, before we get to best bets, we got to talk Stars and Sharks. These two just met last was it over the weekend or is it last week? Went to a shootout.
I
Dallas
think it
was
was Saturday,
Saturday.
right?
Yeah, Dallas was one of the biggest favorites we've seen in the NHL in 20 years, and they had to win it in a shootout. So look out for these feisty Sharks. They're 3-1 at home. Dallas minus 380. Total here 6.5. Um, Tim and I are gonna resist the temptation here. Nick, you're gonna actually look to back Dallas.
Well, I'll just give out a target because this was one of those ones, like we say, where it continues to seem like at open odds makers have a really hard time pricing these gigantic favorites. It feels like these are very consistently being some of the ones that I think are like mispriced. So the Stars opened as low as minus 190 to win in regulation. I would play that down to minus 205. So who knows if that ends up being out there. And then the other one that I'm going to keep my eye on just because I do think like the one thing for me that sets us up as kind of good is, like you said, somehow that game on Saturday went to a shootout, which was absolutely absurd. Um, I don't think that happens again. I thought the Stars could have easily converted on a ton of their chances, and it was kind of just ridiculous that they didn't. And then the other thing that I've kind of got my eye on is if Duchesne sits, where does Wyatt Johnson move in the lineup? And he could be a guy to keep your eye on prop wise because part of the thing with the Stars right now is they have so many forwards that can do damage that it's a little bit of like risky business betting on which specific one will do it. Um, but yeah, I think the Stars look really good. I like the chances they pay off in this game, but seems like they're starting to become a heavier and heavier favorite as we record.
Yeah, just one note here because it is trade deadline week. Um, it was funny. I was looking at Dallas futures right before the Tanev trade last week, and they were at one shop I was looking at, they were 11-1 to win the cup. Tanev trade goes down, and Dallas went to 10-1 to win the cup. And it's like, I just think as a whole here, media people, maybe casual bettors, like we just tend to overrate trades and think that like not that Tanev isn't going to help them. It's just the market reflection of what actually is going on is just something to be mindful of this week. I mean, the best example is you look at Calgary, right? They're selling off and they can't stop winning. So it's just be mindful of what's going on here. Like a lot of these numbers have more things baked into them than you might think. Maybe they have a big liability on X team and they can't make them a long enough, cup number. I look at New Jersey, for example, like for my money, they should be 150 to 1 because you're basically betting on, do they trade for Markstrom? Like it's interesting, right? I'm trying my best to articulate just to be mindful of that.
Yeah, no, I think you raise a good point. Like, I love Tanev. I think it was a great trade for Dallas. I'm pumped on it, given that we've given out Stars futures all year. And he's a clear upgrade over Suter, who's been like such a obvious flaw. But like you said, that still shouldn't equate to a move from 11 to 1 to 10 to 1 because of how little, and it's not that hard to think about when you think like how it actually works. Think of how many teams are going to make deadline deals and how much in hockey. This isn't the NBA, right? Where like you're bringing in a superstar who's going to play 38 minutes in the playoffs and just completely moves the needle. This is one guy who will be one of 5 skaters on the ice for like 20 minutes of a game. So it's pretty hard to say like even the biggest moves should ever really move a team from 11 to 1 to like 9 to 1. Which again, like you said, Tim, I think is a really good note ahead of deadline day. I also think it's a little different this year because I feel like there's so many viable teams that like good cup numbers don't really like exist anywhere anymore, if you know what I mean. Like I don't really think there's gonna be many trades that move anyone to like a bettable price where you need to jump on it right away. The only one that maybe could do that is I guess the Avs, if they got a couple of depth forwards, and then if Carolina got a goalie, those would be the two that might create like a big enough change where you can actually try and like jump on the number. But I feel like it's pretty set this year when you look at it and there's like 12 legitimate cup favorites and only the Knights are probably the only one outside of them that is like plus 12 to 1 most places. So I feel like
Yeah,
it's starting to be clear why there's no value.
there's not a lot of, oh my God, let me pull my phone out quick, quick, quick. Like I think a lot of people fall into that. Like, oh, I saw the move. I just bet, of course, right? Like
Yeah, and I
it's
mean
not
there's pretty
really.
big holds on these outright markets, right? So like if you basically look at this year and agree that like there's 12 actual favorites, then it's pretty obvious when you look at it to say like, okay, I need to think like this is really my team to try and cover up for that hold.
Right.
Or you can do what the geniuses in the room do and parlay the Oilers with Hideki Matsuyama to win the Genesis. That's what the real geniuses do. Um, the best anecdote I can give to just staple that point home is that last year when Patrick Kane got traded, I got texts from 3 different people at different networks and media companies and some other places like how is this going to move the odds? I'm like, it's just not. They just couldn't really wrap their minds around that.
And it probably actually in some shops did. And then people are like, oh my, see,
It like
Yeah,
yeah, I don't even
like
think it
but
did.
that's
I
and
thought it
there's
was like
bets coming in
yeah,
too, right? Like there's a lot of
right,
factors, like you
just
said, Tim.
attributing the right thing to
yeah.
like explaining what made this move. Like a Kane situation. It's like, was that a lot of really smart people that were like, yeah, I mean, this team's a powerhouse, or is that a lot of $20 bets or whatever? Or is that even the book saying, let's move this down, or because of how many idiots are going to just look at it
Yeah. You
and
can
go
hang.
and rush to the window and bet it. You can hang whatever number you want, right? If someone gets Kane, because the amount of, Joe Schmoes will just do it.
And
So just right.
that was the worst. It was like 3 weeks of the Rangers just gotta wait till they have enough cap space. They're doing all these paper moves. Anyways, we talked about that enough last year. So um let's move on to best bets for Tuesday, March the 5th. We'll start with Nick. You're on the Edmonton Oilers. We're all in agreement here, but the Oilers are minus 120 against the Bruins. The Bees are going to be on the second night of a back-to-back. They're an even money underdog at home. A 6.5 total here. I'm trying to wrap my mind around this number and tell me if this is part of what you're thinking here, Nick. The 2 things I'm coming with are, yeah, it's a tough travel spot for the Oilers coming across the country, whatever. But the second one is just the Bruins are still getting way too much credit for where they're at in the standings and not like their actual current form and like their roster makeup at the moment. I know Grizzlick's back, but still. Um, you look at that roster and you're like, how is this team in the race for the President's Trophy?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. They've tailed off really hard. Like if you've been fading the Bruins, that's awesome because you've been doing great. And their underlying results aren't very strong. It does feel like they continue to get a lot of credit for what they've done in the like last season at the start of this year. And now they kind of like the question marks that everyone thought they had at the start of the year are now starting to shine through. So I obviously power rate the Oilers a little ahead of them. I mean, all sports books do. It's not like that's complicated. And then when you think about the back-to-back traveling spot for the Bruins here, I think that really wipes out anything you'd give for home ice advantage. So I think I will. It'll be interesting to see how it moves because I really do think that the Oilers deserve to be a bigger favorite here, and I can't really see who's backing the Bruins at this number. But there's minus 120s and better than that out there currently, and I would play down to minus 125. I think it's just a great spot to pick on the Oilers. And yeah, for the Bruins, like even if Zaka goes tonight, it does seem like they're starting to look a lot more kind of one-dimensional offensively compared to other top teams. So they're really reliant in these games on their goaltending, which is obviously the clear edge, but it just continues to me like I look at these games and I'm like, is his edge versus Skinner enough that I want to like back Boston here in this back-to-back spot at all? I don't see it. I think the Oilers are going to own a lot of the play for a minus 20 favorite or minus 120 favorite, I should say.
Yeah, I'm totally in agreement. I just got done talking to the NHL guys about what I think of the Bruins, and it's the middle of the ice for them is really tough. Zaka or not. Look, Charlie Coyle has been a great story this year, and he's risen to the occasion. But him being your number one center, and just talking from a macro level here, when they get in the first round of the playoffs, any team's 1-2 punch up the middle that they play, whether it's Florida, Toronto, is a better 1-2 punch than Coyle and Zaka. I'm sorry, and that is, I think, what is coming through in crunch time here down the stretch, and why they're losing some of these games and unable to protect some of these leads is so much of these close games comes down to the middle of the ice. Like goaltending, they get a big check plus, but on the back end, they've underperformed despite having some big names on the back end. And the middle of the ice has been weak for them. So I just think they have too many difficulties. This is a monster week for the Bruins. It's 3-4. They get Toronto twice, Edmonton mixed into that on a back-to-back. It will be, I could see this being a situation where the Bruins continue to fall a little bit here, and then Don Sweeney's hand is really forced come Friday afternoon, and they may take a big swing.
I think they'll take a big swing regardless because the rest of the team's just too good. The blue line, like I'm like even have been like very skeptical on the Bruins compared to most people the last 2 years, but the blue line and the goaltending is just way too strong. And with where the core is at, I think you just got to swing. Even though I also think whichever center they do bring in is going to get overhyped because, like you said, it's still going to be a clear mismatch versus the Leafs or versus Florida, any of these teams. But
Couldn't
they
hang
do
with JG Pajot on
Oh,
Saturday
come
night,
on.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly what we were saying.
yeah.
Couldn't even hang with him.
Yeah. So anyways, I think Boston's always alive because of their goaltending and defense core and the way the playoffs actually go, but it's always going to be a mismatch no matter who they bring in.
Yeah, we're all in agreement here. On the Oilers, Tim, we'll go to you next. For your best bet is coming in on the Blues. They'll be on a back-to-back. Bennington going Monday night, so it'll likely be Joel Hoffer against the New York Islanders. I'll be in the building, so adjust your numbers accordingly. Blues plus 130, Isles minus 150, and the total here is 6. The Islanders on their first 3-game winning streak since December 14th, I believe. So, where are you going here, Tim? You're not doing it, are you?
Oh boy, I'm doing it. It's 3, make it 4. Leave off. The New York Islanders, full on brainwash, full on indoctrination from the line change pod. My first year here. Yeah, Leboff, you got me. I don't love the price. Okay, in the minus 150 range, it's a little steep, but I do like the Islanders. I think this is tough sledding for St. Louis on this back-to-back. Philly's going to make you earn it. And then you come onto the island, they're going to make you earn it as well. It's not it's a fade of the Blues, that I don't think very highly of in a play on an Islanders team that is all of a sudden plus 130 to make the playoffs. And you look at the way these things mapped out. I think that they are totally live to get in. And how do you get in? You get in by winning games. So -1, I guess the highest I'd go is -155, maybe 160, but that's, yeah, I'm sorry, Mike. I'm on your Islanders.
Yeah, Nick, one thing, I'm not going to bet it. I'll be there. That's enough for me. It's enough stress. It's a massive, massive game for the Islanders because then they go out west to play the Sharks and Ducks. So it's like you put this one in your pocket and you're looking at what could potentially be an actual, season-changing winning streak. We talk so much about on the show about coaching, and the moves we want to see made. Whether it's like Nick Ehlers in Winnipeg, Lindy Ruffin and Alex Holtz. There's all these kind of hypothetical situations that we want to see because then it would make teams like more valuable, bettable. Patrick Roy made a change after the Islanders lost to Tampa Bay last weekend or 2 weekends ago now, and put Brock Nelson with Bo Horvat and Matt Barzal, and that got all the attention. But the other thing he did was he adjusted the defensive pairing, so it's now Dobson with Pelech, Romanov and Polak, and Aho and Riley. And since then, the Islanders have been like really good. I think like much more cohesive. The third line with Engvall, Cizikas, and Holmstrom has been really good. Even the fourth line center, our boy Kyle McLean, whose dad is the assistant coach, has been pretty decent. Like there are things moving in the right direction here. Everyone seems to be going marginally in the right direction, and I do think that coaching change could be what is making the Islanders much more palatable at this kind of number. But I'm not gonna get there. I will be in the building.
I don't mind the Islanders either at -150. I think it's pretty reasonable. It is weird, like you said, Mike, that taking Pelech and Pulak apart has somehow been better, but they did look really weird together this year. It feels like weird to say that after the years of them being such a good pairing, but I agree. I think it's the right spot. I don't know. I'm not excited about it in terms of like all the bets on this slate. So like it just feels like one where the Islanders will piss us off. I don't know. I was laughing about our social media team pumping up the Islanders over Detroit win, which I'm just still so happy about because of all the missed Islanders calls. It just felt hilarious, but they were due for that one, I think. So yeah, I don't know. I don't mind it. I think from like a pure numbers standpoint, I'm surprised they aren't closer to like -165 here.
Yeah, I mean, if you just say we power rate the Islanders better than St. Louis, okay, check. Back to back for St. Louis, check. A little bit of home ice here, check. They actually play Matt Barzal now, check. Okay, play on.
A lot of bit of home ice with your man in the building. A lot of bit of home ice.
Exactly. And they score out empty net goals now. So
yes, they score empty net goals. How about it?
Scratch what I said about futures, right? There's value.
Kyle Palmieri, first period natural hat trick. What is going on here? Okay. My best bet. It's hard to follow up that. I should have saved it for the end, but I'll go the Vancouver Canucks. They are +100 on the road against the Kings. Los Angeles -120. A total here is 6.5. You try really hard not to get too concerned with stuff that's happening off the ice with teams, but over the course of a long season, especially a good team with Vancouver that's just been through a lot over the past couple seasons, I do think it can get to you, and I don't think that it's a huge coincidence that they're this like dip in form where they went 1-4-1 or 1-5-1 over a 7-game stretch started to percolate along with the Elias Pettersson news, and I think that stuff can weigh on a team in a long season, and now that that's done and dusted, I do think we might see a little bit of a bump from Vancouver. I wouldn't call it a terrific effort against the Ducks over the weekend, but they do win on Sunday. It's 2-1, pretty low event. They outshoot Anaheim 31-18. It was, I guess the cliche would be it was a professional win over a team that you got to win. You got to beat in that situation. Now they take on the Kings, who are still riding high. They looked really good against the Devils, but I do think that with the goaltending being so combustible in Los Angeles, I don't want to bet them as a favorite against a team this good. I know that they've been trending in the right direction since the coaching change, and give them a lot of credit for getting climbing their way back to the team that we saw earlier this season. But a lot of this winning streak is like they're winning games when uh, just because like their goaltender is letting up less than 3 goals. Like, and I just don't think that's going to happen here. You look at they're 5-3 in their last 8, and if you look at the 5 wins, it's 2-1 win against the Penguins, a 5-1 win against Columbus, a 3-2 win in a shootout against the Ducks, and then back-to-back 5-1 wins, one over Vancouver and one over the Devils. So they're still asking too much out of the goaltenders, Riddick and Talbot, and it's just going to be a huge disparity with likely Demko in net. So I'm happy to bet Vancouver as a pick 'em or better here, Nick.
Yeah, I'm right with you. I think the Canucks just deserve to be power rated above the Kings still. It feels like the Kings are getting a lot of credit. The Kings have reverse splits this year too. So like if you're the type who weights that, the numbers again don't agree that it matters that this game is in LA. Maybe they play to a slightly better record at home moving forward, but I think that's kind of a relevant note. And then yeah, with Demko in goal, I still feel like what the Canucks have going on means they deserve to be a slight favorite here. And I don't mind the spot with them having lost last week. I think they'll be up for this one and ready to go on the road. So I agree. I think at even money, good spot to back the Canucks.
Yeah, Leboff, you nailed it with the goaltending disparity. A lot has been made about Vancouver and, trying to sell on this Vancouver stock. But look, here's the thing, like they have goaltending. So that's what makes him very hard to sell on and makes them very live for the playoffs. A lot of people, first round exit, this and that. I think a lot of these teams that kind of surprise us, I don't know how much of it, if you just think back, I feel like New Jersey last year, the way that, they played, but their kryptonite still ended up being in net. Like Vancouver doesn't have that problem, which I think is just such a better thing to have in your back pocket if you're one of these surprise teams. Also, the Pedersen note, I think you're bang on about at least like, that's that's over with, that elephant in the room. And even if it's not true, it'll be a reason in the national media if Vancouver goes on a little winning streak here to say that is why
that will be the
they
credit.
turned it around. So like, and you can fully see that. So as a gambler, I don't care what the reason is, but I can totally see it being like, see what happened? They signed Pedersen and now they're winning again. That was the only issue, right?
That was it.
Yeah,
that was the only issue.
Yeah, and I mean they're coming off their like worst stretch of play of like the whole year, so chances are they're going to stabilize to an extent, right? Because like this has literally been like their worst 3 weeks out of the entire season, so probably a little bit better than they've shown over that run.
Okay, that does it. We'll be back again Wednesday morning. It's a short slate, so we'll probably get more into the trade deadline. I tell you once again not to bet teams just because they make a trade, unless they're the Avalanche and they get like, I don't know, a top line center, or the Bruins and they get a true number 1 center, or the Hurricanes go and get an actual goaltender. But until then, the best bets came in on the Canucks against the Kings. For me, Tim, he went with the New York Islanders. Nick is on the Oilers, the underdogs. Unfortunately, the Chicago Blackhawks were mentioned, so were the Montreal Canadiens and the Columbus Blue Jackets.
They were
That'll
just
do
mentioned.
it.
They were just mentioned.
They were just mentioned. Yeah. That'll do it for us today. We'll be back Wednesday. Good luck with all your bets.